today's conversation, we have Ishita Sawant. She is founder and CEO of Miola. She's having an extensive, strong background in e-commerce, marketing, and lifestyle. Welcome, Ishita, to our channel. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Komal. Doing very well. As we just discussed, it's very exciting times for us. So it's all hands on deck, but doing well. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, Ishita, I was just Googling, searching e-commerce platform. There are a lot of e-commerce platform, in the market. So, Miola steps, into our in front of eyes. So the name Miola, it sounds very much interesting. So that's why, I was not jumped up in the starting of the conversation, explaining everyone, what Miola is about, because I want you, to deep dive into what is Miola is all about, because you are the person, who invented it just walk us through the initial inspiration behind the Miola and how your upbringing in Bangalore startup ecosystem influenced your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So for context, I'm from Bangalore, which over the last few years has been, kind of popularly known as the startup capital of India or the Silicon Valley of India, so to say. So during my growing up years, my formative education, high school, etc., we used to hear a lot of news about companies like Swiggy, Flipkart building out of Bangalore for the world. Bangalore overall is also known to be a very good test center for a lot of products because we have really, power users, as you call them, in the city. People adapt to technology pretty well. So a lot of companies use Bangalore as their test centers. But I think my journey with entrepreneurship actually began when I left Bangalore and I went off to the US to pursue my bachelor's degree. And something that kind of bit me at that point in time was studying abroad. I liked going to different new places, traveling, making new friends, living and kind of settling into new countries for like 6-7 months, figuring your way around. And that's when I saw this problem that, consumers, which was Gen Z and young millennials, people my own age, were finding it very difficult to find products they truly loved and resonated with, right? While our parents and the generations prior to that looked at price as a huge consideration, looked at more what are you getting for your buck, and how much can you kind of negotiate on that. This generation was a little different. While yes, price was a consideration, obviously, they were also looking for what's the best experience they can get within that same price range. In addition to that, given the age of social media, etc., they were also very woke and aware of what's happening in the world around them, right? Sustainability was at the forefront. So that's when we realized that, the next generation of consumer probably needs a little different kind of marketplace to shop from. Which curates purpose-driven, premium, high-quality products, but still at more affordable or achievable price points. And that's how Miola really came to be. For the consumer, we're solving for curation and bringing to the forefront products that are good for you and the environment. And from the supplier and seller side, we're really looking at how can we bring great Indian homegrown brands or even global homegrown brands to the forefront, so such that they can compete with the PNGs and like the HULs of the world. So yeah, that's how Miola came to be. To be very honest, started off more as a project in university, and then went on to kind of again reaching out to Bangalore-based founders, understanding their take on this industry. And when we got some bit of market validation, we said, okay, I think it's time to jump all in. And I was lucky enough to be able to raise a round of funding right before I had to graduate from university. So the decision to come back and build Miola became that much more easier because we had the right kind of backing, whether it's people or capital. And then I think around March of last year was when we launched Miola. So it's been just about a year and a half now.
Wow, awesome. So interesting, And I think it is very motivating also for the people who are just starting their journey into this. Ishita, you just mentioned that you are studying the consumer behavior, what they want, what they don't want. So what I feel is the D2C space is very crowded right now, right?
Mhm.
So what sets Miola apart, especially in terms of promoting sustainable shopping? You just mentioned Gen Z. So
Yeah.
what Miola is doing different in this space?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think Meola exists today because the D2C space is so crowded, right? We are solving exactly that. So, a lot of people ask me this question that why don't you just start a brand? But there are so many brands out there that are not discovered, which have fabulous products, and that's why Meola exists. How can we take this clutter and organize it in a way and curate it in a way that Gen Z likes this and discovers this product, starts using it because of the great experience that we provide them as a platform and the trust that we build with them. So I think that was the value proposition, that there are so many great brands out there, but why is no one using and discovering them? And, we hear only probably 10, 15 names all the time and see them everywhere, but there's so much more. One interesting data point I can give you is with Meola. What's interesting is typically with marketplaces, you will see top 15 to 20 brands drive 70 to 80% of the sales on the platform. With Meola, that's not the case, right? I think our top brands probably drive only 55 to 60% of our sales, and the rest is taken care of by the smaller, mid-size emerging brands. Who are also being tried and tested by consumers. So that's something we're very proud of. And we want that ratio to only keep increasing in its value. So that's something that's interesting. And we're a horizontal marketplace because we believe that if a consumer trusts us for one category, whether it's for their child, for themselves, for their home, they will trust us for another category too. So that's why we are like a one-stop shop for all things good, is what we call ourselves.
Wow, Ishita, that sounds great. So you just mentioned, you did your degree in international business and global fashion studies from Northeastern University. So how does that degree, shape your perspective on the global consuming economies?
Yeah. So I think because there was so much international and global in my degree, that also prompted me to study abroad. So I spent time in about 5 countries over 3.5 years. So I was in, of course, North America, in the US. I was in Singapore. I was in London. I was in Greece for some time, and then Paris, France. So essentially, I got an idea of like Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, as well as like Western Europe, and then North America as consumer markets. And then, of course, I was living in India. So my summers were spent here. So I really saw that at the crux of it, all of these economies are moving towards the same goal, right? Whether it was the smallest, like tiniest boutique shop on an island in Greece, or like the largest shopping mall in Singapore, with like the biggest LVMH owned brand, everyone was talking sustainability at the forefront of everything. And everyone was speaking more experiences than the actual product. So at the crux of it, I think the world as a consumer is moving towards something very different. I think India is quite at the forefront of it because of the manufacturing capabilities that we have, plus the fact that India is deeply rooted in sustainability as a concept, right? Ayurveda, minimalistic living, all of these things stem from India. So when you think of it, for us, it's more about going back, but in a more easier and, carefree manner than we had to. So, we've been making haldi chandan packs at home for as long as our grandmoms have. But at the same time, if someone packages it and gives us a good enough product that we can just apply on our face, why not? So we realized India was at the forefront of it, and the Indian consumer is very demanding, right? So India tends to build very resilient, agile, well thought through product and formulation. So India is not a consumer market that's built only for India. It can be a very adaptable product that has global potential. So, that's why we chose India as our starting ground. And then, of course, the plan is to go global and take all of these brands with us.
Yeah, great. Because I also feel, whatever in India we have, whether it be manufacturing, the designer, everything, we have there, people are accepting. The acceptance power is much more in India, and we have a lot of hit and trials we can do. What will go, what will not go. So Ishita, great. What I have learned, reading about you on a lot of social media and everything, that somewhere you wanted to be a film critic.
Yes, that's true.
Right.
I'm not sure where you found this. I don't know when I've written about it, but that's true.
Yeah. So how, this, the mindset from film critic to e-commerce, how the transition is there, in thoughts here?
Yeah, so it's interesting. That's a very nice question. But as young, when we're young, it starts off as like, I want to be a vet, I want to be a pilot. So my first ever thing that I wanted to be was a vet because I'm an only child. And that's why I always wanted a pet, for some companion. But my parents were very much against it. My mom was scared of dogs at that point in time. So then, that's how it stemmed to become a vet. Film critic was a very interesting one. I'm not sure how it came about to be, but I still remember I think I was in 4th grade and we had to write like, what do you want to be in life? And I wrote film critic, and my teacher was like really shocked that, this is a very odd one.
Yeah.
And then she said, why do you want to be a film critic? And I said, because I like watching films. So it was as simple as that. And I think at that point, I'd come across probably like Rajiv Masanda, one of these people who, used to talk about films beyond just what you see and unpacking what it means. So if you think of it, I'm doing the same thing, right? Today, I'm looking at consumers, trying to look at insights and details and how can we build on it more. And that's what a film critic does. They look beyond just the surface level. But yeah, that was an interesting one. And it's a story my family laughs over because, the teacher had called my parents saying that your daughter seems to be, on a different track of her own. She doesn't want to be a pilot or anything. She wants to be a film critic and watch movies all day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So that time, I think our parents wanted us to do only MBA, doctor, engineering, and the film critics came into mind. It might be shocking for them, I'm sure.
Yeah, but touch wood, I mean, I've had quite, liberal parents. They've let me make my own decisions. But of course, this one was a little bit of a shocker for them because, they first were like, how does she even know that this job exists? Right? So, yeah, it's interesting.
Nice. So, Ishita, every startup have a lot of challenges, and I'm sure, you might have also faced a lot of challenges in the journey of making Miola a big brand. So, how did you overcome all of them?
Yeah. So I think starting off, because I come from the city of entrepreneurs, where we live, who we interact with, who you kind of bump into in coffee shops, every second person tends to be someone who's trying to do something on their own, right? So a lot of journeys I've heard, I knew it was not easy getting into it. And I think when we came into the market, which was around March of last year, it's when the decline in the overall funding environment and stuff happened, right? So we realized that capital may not be as easily available as we had anticipated it to be, right? So we had to kind of build fundamentally very right. We couldn't do a lot of things that our predecessors had done, which was good because we were learning now. So I wouldn't look at it as challenges. Yes, challenges came, but we overcame them and then we faced new challenges. So as long as the challenges are new and, you are somewhere overcoming them, that's a good thing. You shouldn't stay stuck on a challenge for too long. And I feel like, our team, we discussed this and I said, when we look at where we've come and where we want to go, we feel ki challenge kya hai yaar, enjoy kiya process, we enjoyed the work. So I think, we have to be prepared for the worst, hope for the best, and just ensure that you're solving problems, right? Just solving and moving forward. And the minute you have a new problem, that's a good indication. It means you've solved the previous.
And you are taking one big step ahead. If there's a new problem, you're taking one step big ahead.
Correct. And I think early in the process, you will have those challenges. There's nothing you can do. I don't think even a founder who's run 10 companies in the past successfully will not face challenges in any new business. So that's part and parcel of the process. And then, of course, being in this ecosystem, surrounded by mentors, I have a very strong personal board of advisors, I like to call them, who, I run to every time I feel I just need some kind of hand-holding or mentorship or even just simply reassurance ki it'll get better. So that's something very important, talking to people who've been there, done that.
Yeah, true. So, Ishita, what we believe, what everyone believes that, Gen Z values customization because we are talking about Miola. So Miola is all about customization, right? Customization immensely. How does Miola cater to this specific need? And how do you ensure the brands onboarded align with this vision?
Yeah. So I think at the forefront, what we are is a sustainable platform. We want to ensure that everything that we curate and show to the customer is, one, good for them, does not have any negative impact on them, and two, as an extension of that, good for the environment and society around us.
Yeah.
So as a process and as a vetting process within Miola, we don't have brands that create any negative kind of impact or have any questionable products or toxic chemicals in their formulations. So I think that itself is something that resonates with our audience quite a bit. We go a step further. We have, you'll see a lot of like athleisure on our platform. You'll see a lot of hemp infused products on our platform. At the same time, you'll see a fair bit of premium collection also on the platform in comparison to like a Myntra, Flipkart, or Amazon. And that's because we really realize that this consumer is built on three main values. One is purpose, which is sustainability, the greater good, the value beyond just, kind of the functionality of the product. Two is simply premiumization, right? India as an economy is growing, per capita income in the country is growing. Even recently Aditya Birla announced they're getting Galeries Lafayette to India. Reliance Brands announced that they're expanding Cartier and Tiffany's luxury footprint. We never thought India would be at the forefront of luxury consumption till now. So what happened to China a couple of years ago is now happening to India, and luxury consumption is increasing. And at the same time, you have your P&Gs and HULs talking about a drop in, commoditized products in the rural area. So even you have rural tier 2, tier 3 India that's also, very well aware of social media, discovering products through there and not buying just what's simply available to you at your local Kirana shop. So there's this whole shift towards premiumization, which is good because that helps sustainability thrive a little bit more if you're willing to pay a little bit more. The second is so premiumization. And then the third is what you said, right? More personalization and customization when it comes to experiences in the actual product. So we see products where, parents can get their kids' names embroidered on the products, do really well. And then customization in terms of probably routines, sets, even expert curated collections is something we've seen doing really well. So I really feel a blend of these three values is where the Indian consumer is going to fall at in the next 5 years. And the most interesting part is the higher you go in premiumness and luxury, the higher growth that's also happening, which is so counterintuitive to the Indian audience. So the Indian audience really surprises us, the consumers. There isn't a trend. You've just got to keep watching and working with it.
Yeah, because what I feel, this is my personal, say that in India, the people are very emotional, right? Like you just mentioned that the handwritten, the personalized things are doing very good. So,
Yeah.
Because I also get a lot of on Rakhi, the Rakhi festival was there. So I get a lot of Rakhis, personalized things. So yeah, in India, the emotion touch is more if when it comes to, relatives and all that. Good. So, next one, you have, I think, you have a very good team because that's why, you're doing very good. So, how your investors and team members are a driving force? Can you share some insight into how you build your team and the core values that guide Meola's operations?
Yeah. So I'll start off with the team because I think, any good business is built on a very, very good founding team and thereafter. We are a fairly lean team for the kind of work that we do and the scale that we operate at. And that's largely because we believe very strongly in operational excellence and using technology and AI wherever possible. So, our platform is built very self-service-like, which gives the sellers, a lot of tools to just sell on the platform themselves. And there's very little intervention required from our team to help them. We give them inventory management, on order management systems, analytics, all of this on their dashboard so that they're able to kind of make decisions, whether it's prices, discounting, campaigns, etc. themselves. So I think that's one reason the product has come up really well. The second thing is, I think as a team, we also believe a lot in optimizing ourselves first before we decide to add someone to the team. So that's been great. And I've been touchwood blessed with a very good team. The reality is I come with a lot less experience in the domain than any of them, right? I'm probably the youngest in the team too. And so my goal is always to ensure that they are aligned to our vision and they know where it is that we want to go. And then, I think they take up the reins and they deliver and that's how things work. And I respect them for their subject matter expertise and they respect me for the vision that I come in with. And how we want to build this out for the consumer. In terms of investors, it's interesting, right? I think we meet investors so very often. I think as startup founders, we're perpetually pitching. An elevator pitch is always somewhere here at the back of your
Yeah.
mind waiting to be used. But I've been blessed again with very good investors who have been more than investors, also mentors, and their mentorship has contributed as much as the capital has, which is great. So when you have an investor who's willing to spend their time and sell for you and be a spokesperson for your brand, what more do you want? But given that, I think as you pitch more, as you talk to more investors, you get better in the process. So yeah, rejection comes and goes. It's just about if you're evolving with every single pitch, and then that confidence comes within you. But I think it's a great community of investors. Now that there's a slight correction in the market, investors are also looking at business that are built fundamentally right. And luckily for us, we were built during those tough times. So we've built a lot of, great on-ground processes when it comes to compliance and, where our expenditure goes and our P&Ls, etc. So, I think things look good there.
Nice. So, coming back to the Meola's, the thing, like you guys are bridging a gap between the contemporary living and a sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future of retail heading, especially in the context of Asia Pacific region? Because in Asia Pacific region, retail is very big market, right? So where do you see that?
So I think it's interesting. Within India, I think we discussed that things are headed towards a little bit more premiumization. Whether it's the larger PNG, HUL talking about coming up with more premium products or acquiring more premium brands, or the D2C landscape, new founders building brands in that space. So I think Indian consumer is definitely there. For the rest of the region, I think, it's quite scattered. If you look at Singapore is also a region where premiumization already exists. And that's why, a lot of brands built there are on that behest. You look at Indonesia is still a little bit more massy market. However, they're a little bit more like the Indian consumer, where they like to try stuff and they're not as stuck onto one product. They're willing to experiment like the Indian consumer. Then you have like the Japan region, which is very stuck in Shiseido. They have their brands that they are loyalists to. So I think it's quite a diverse region. But within that, I think India is that melting pot where we have so many different regions and such demanding consumers. The brands we build, I strongly feel at least 60 to 70% of these brands have very, very strong potential globally. Of course, in Southeast Asia, but also in the Middle East region. Recently at the G20 summit, the India, Middle East, Europe trade corridor was announced. And that's something that's going to be at the forefront of everything. I feel like Middle East till now saw Indian people as great and coming and kind of building their economy. But now I think Middle East is looking at India as an opportunity.
Wow.
That includes the Indian brands, our manufacturing, the whole supply chain capability that we have. So I think it's definitely India's decade and people need to start digging.
Yeah, nice. So, Ishita, after talking to you, we got to know how India is, doing good in all the segmentation. As Meola continues to grow and evolve, what are your long-term goals for this platform, and how do you envision its impact on reshaping the shopping habits of the next generation?
Yeah. So I don't think we are reshaping. We are just enabling a much faster or catalyzing that change that's already coming in the market. I think, 5 to 10 years down the lane, where I want to see Meola is definitely at the forefront as a primary marketplace in the country that's known for selling premium, high quality, but value for money products. And of course, that's enabled through good customers coming on the platform and purchasing and understanding the value of these products, but also sellers upping the game when it comes to these products, innovating a lot more, trying to bring prices down. So we would love to be enablers and help sellers also achieve their goals much more quickly than they have in the past. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. And yeah, of course, plans to go global. Take the India story, take the premiumization story to few regions globally, and see how it works out. We're quite confident of that. But yeah, that's where we want to see the India story go, and then some bit of offline presence more tech-enabled, experiential offline presence is what we're planning.
Nice. Ishita, thank you so much. With this, we are end of this interview. And, after talking to you, you are such a young person, and you have so much in your mind going on how we should take India ahead, because this is the India brand, right? So how we should take it ahead, how we can make more proud our India. So good to hear that. And thank you so much for taking our time and telling everybody your story about Meola. Last word, you want to share anything you want to, just share with our audience, any,
Yeah.
yep, last
Yeah,
thing.
no, I think, as you mentioned, the India story is going to be built by the youth of India, and hopefully also by more and more youth taking up entrepreneurship as an opportunity. So I really hope that whether it's through this interview and many other channels, Indian youth actually sees entrepreneurship as more approachable and feels like they can try their hand at least. Because if you succeed, the upside is great, but if you don't, there's a great amount of learning which is also holding a lot of value. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We want to promote a lot of entrepreneurship through the platform, and personally, I'm also quite passionate about it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Ishita, and you have a great day. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Komal. Thanks.